Hi guys, Steve here again. We've had quite a few requests from the guys on the bike hub with regards to doing some basic servicing on forks. What we're going to be doing today is just showing you how to take the lower legs off, how to clean the fork, assemble it, put it back together, and you'll be ready to hit the trails. The basic tools that you need for this simple job are shock pump, which I think most of you guys will have. We use a special tool to take off the lowers, but it's not needed. Good old 10mm T-bar will do the same job. You need to be slightly more careful when using it, but we'll show you how that's done, but either will do. Take the top cap off, put the shock pump on, and make a note of what pressure is in the fork at the time. Release all the pressure in the fork so that it's safe to work with. The next step is remove your brakes and keep them out the way. You don't want any oil or contamination on the brake pads. The next step is to remove the rebound knob with a little grub screw. Make sure you don't lose a grub screw. They have a tendency to go missing, and put that on your workbench. With the proper tool, you take the nut off and you screw this on, and just before it beds down, it's just basically a tool to knock it off. When you use this, you're actually using the nut to knock the rod in. So if you take it out too much, so there's only like a couple of threads on, and you whack it, you could damage the threads. What we have here is the inside of the damper. Now the reason we use a hammer to knock the damper loose and the air sleeve side is simply that this rod, which sits inside the fork leg, is actually wedged tight into the outer leg. And on top of this thread, you have what they call a crush washer. It's this little guy here. And then you got the nut. And that all sits in sequence there. To remove the damper, you have to unfortunately give this rod a knock down to release it from the outer leg. And that needs to be done on both sides of the leg, otherwise the fork legs won't come off. Both sides are stuck inside to the outer legs. So we're going to do a little damage check on the stanchions, make sure there's no wear, no nicks, and if it's all good, you can basically give it a nice wipe down with a lint-free cloth, and that part is done. You'll notice that the bicycle is upside down. The reason we're going to do this is that all the lubricating oil that sits in your lower legs will run into the stanchions, and when you remove them, you won't lose any of it. Very important is to make sure that you pull out the foam ring, and that this needs to be washed really well. This is the one thing that holds lubrication in the upper legs. Cleaning the foam rings with a disc brake cleaner is really useful. Disc brake cleaner is something that you should really have in your toolbox at home. It's really helpful for cleaning your brake pads. That's its main purpose, but it's just a really strong detergent. So if you ever need to clean anything, mucky piece on your derailleur, it's useful for all those kind of things. So it's a worthwhile product to get. Most good bike shops will have it. The lower legs then need to be flushed out. Using a bottle brush is quite handy sometimes. And make sure that it's all dried before you put it back together. Time to reassemble the fork. The first thing you need to do is soak the foam rings in Fox 20 weight gold. Just soak the rings in, make sure it's well saturated, and then install them back into the lower legs. Just add 5 cc's of your 20 weight gold back into the upper part of the leg. It just helps with a bit of lubrication, and when you install the fork, you'll always lose a couple of cc's just with the removal. If you've had to do an oil change because you've opened it up, the forks are filthy inside, you've cleaned the oil out, once you've put it back together, you're looking at about 30 cc's of oil that needs to go into the forks for lubrication. Just double check what your fork takes. Every fork is different, but the majority of forks will run about 30 cc's of oil per leg. Install the crush washer first on each rod, and then install the nuts and tighten them up. It's you don't have to be super tight, just a nice nip, just to crush the washer a little bit, and the forks are then safe. You then reinstall the rebound knob, make sure the little grub screw is nice and snug, give it a few turns, make sure it's all working nicely, and you're good to go.